Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where I don't know about you, but I've got Marvel Whiplash. What are you doing, Feige? So the studio delivered the $200 million plus opening for Deadpool and Wolverine that had seemed like a pie-in-the-sky projection. Remember, we were like, stop over-projecting, but they didn't. But then, in many ways, Marvel sucked all the air out of the room, out of the victory, with the shocking and confusing announcement last night that Robert Downey Jr. is back as Dr. Doom. Robert Downey Jr. He just can't stand to see anybody else be the star of the MCU. He did it with Chris Evans, and he's doing it again with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. Man, as I said last night, this attitude keeps getting him in a lot of trouble, but he keeps on doing it. Anyway, he's most likely playing a Tony Stark variant who will be named and called Victor Von Doom. There's some debate as to whether or not he's a variant, but some of you are using, well, I don't want to give spoilers for Deadpool and Wolverine, but let me just say that one's clearly a joke, whereas you can't build two Avengers movies off of a joke. I think it seems definitive that it would be a Tony Stark variant, whose different experience has made him Victor Von Doom. And there's been some crossover between Doom and Tony Stark in the comics for them to use as canon to maybe make this okay? I mean, we'll see. The multiverse continues aggressively, perhaps more aggressively than ever before, in the wake of the success of a movie that makes fun of the MCU multiverse and literally has Deadpool saying that Kevin Feige and company should take the L and move on. What is happening? That's how many comic book fans are feeling today. I saw some of you say, just trust Marvel. And then I saw a couple of you say, was this the MCU? One of the best comments I said was, is this the MCU jumping the Stark? That was a good one. And potentially true. We'll see. I mean, maybe it'll turn out great. But this reminds me a little bit of how Star Wars decided to play with expectations and to have interesting conversations with The Last Jedi and then The Acolyte, and it has not gone over well. I always find these conversations and discussion, explorations interesting, but it seems for the most part, fandom is not down for that. So that is like a word of caution that I think there are a lot of red flags going all over the place, Feige, but, maybe Feige feels he can maneuver through the red flags and go to glory. I guess we've had enough surprises. I think to this day, Heath Ledger succeeding as the Joker is a double-edged sword because I think it inspires risks, but sometimes people are like, maybe it'll be like that, and then it's not. All right, so here's a question that we can ask right now. Should Kevin Feige have waited to reveal the new plans for the Avengers movies until D23 in about 2 weeks to give Deadpool and Wolverine a little time to breathe? I mean, talk about cutting a movie off at the knees. I think, obviously the Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom had leaked, but nobody believed it. That's why everybody was still shocked when it was announced at Comic-Con. I myself had dismissed it as being simply too ridiculous to be true. So I think they could have waited the 2 additional weeks, to be honest with you. Sure, the Russo brothers had leaked. I think I would have waited. I would have waited the 2 weeks because, again, I think this is potentially harmful to Deadpool and Wolverine. I mean, we'll see. What should we expect for a second weekend drop for Deadpool and Wolverine? Well, let's take a look at the other biggest openings of all time. And you can see their second weekends because, you're dealing with a big number here. So it's going to drop. But you're looking at a range here of, interestingly, anywhere from 40% to all the way to around 70%. And you could say that it would be only the movies that didn't do well that had a big drop, that were poorly received, like The Last Jedi. But look at Spider-Man No Way Home, I think in large part because the movie had opened so big, about 60 million more than Deadpool and Wolverine, as you can see. I think that prior to the Hall H announcements, I would have expected a Deadpool and Wolverine second weekend drop to have a 5 in front of it, maybe even a 4. But now I'm concerned that it could have a 6 in front of it. Not that the movie still couldn't reach $1 billion, but I really do think that someone really turned the lights on the party here. It's weird. All right, the film does have incredible, I think we're all still processing it, but it was weird for me. I had just seen Deadpool and Wolverine again, right before the Marvel panel. It got out like 8:50, like right before the panel started at 9 o'clock. And I was on a Deadpool and Wolverine high. I was so excited about what this meant for the future of the MCU. And then, as I said, the Marvel announcements at Hall H at the end just like sucked all the air out of the room, you know, like you just didn't know how to feel. And I think we feel directionless. I think we felt like we had a clear directive coming out of Deadpool and Wolverine. And now I think we're back to like the uncertainty that we had before Deadpool and Wolverine came out. It's bizarre. I'm curious, what was both your intellectual and emotional reaction to the Hall H announcements, particularly when it comes to the Avengers movies and Robert Downey Jr. as Doom? Now, Deadpool and Wolverine does have incredible audience scores, amazing audience scores. They blow the moderate Rotten Tomatoes critic score out of the water. Very strong audience reception. And it's posting record numbers out of the gate. Thank goodness, because I don't know how much runway it has left. Or road. 6th biggest opening day of all time. 8th, I mean, that's been changed a little bit because Thursday showings, ever since that tragic incident, have, instead of just being like midnight showings, now they start at 3 p.m. So the Fridays have almost become 2 days. Because, Deadpool and Wolverine did like 38 or something on Thursday and then made up the rest on Friday. But still, with this new system, it's the 6th biggest opening of all time, opening day of all time, the 8th biggest opening of all time overall, the biggest opening ever for an R-rated movie, and the 5th biggest opening ever for the MCU. Very strong numbers. But that, again, was when it seemed like Deadpool and Wolverine was shifting the course of the entire MCU, and that we were heading potentially towards the X-Men, barreling towards the X-Men. Like they have that really great, like nostalgia behind the scenes bloopers reel and stuff of the whole X-Men franchise over the credits. And I was watching that being like, the first time I saw the movie, I was tweeting my reaction, so I missed it. So when I saw it again, I was like, that's beautiful, man. I'm ready for more X-Men. And now I'm like, well, I guess that's not ever or happening for quite some time. I mean, I'm not saying there won't be an X-Men here and there. I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see. But I'm nervous. As I had said in my coverage, this movie had seemed more like a hello than a goodbye. But now after the Hall H panel, it seems like a goodbye again. I expected to be spending this entire video when I was thinking about movie math going into the weekend. We started to see the numbers come together. I thought this would be a whole video just about celebrating Deadpool and Wolverine and just talking about the success of the movie. But I feel like we've already moved on to, Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. And those movies don't come out for 2 years. I mean, who knows what this is going to do to Cap 4 and Thunderbolts. I hope they have lots of Easter eggs and hints for what's coming in those other 2 movies instead of being standalone adventures. But you know what? It's not fair to Deadpool and Wolverine to not be able to give it its flowers. So let's force ourselves to refocus and take a moment to celebrate this incredible accomplishment, which I feel is largely thanks to Ryan Reynolds, and why the MCU still feels so weird when you go back and look at the projects that Feige is handling on his own. Ryan Reynolds even got his own panel at Comic-Con on Friday evening, screening the film for audiences with an incredible drone show greeting fans as they walked out of Hall H into the San Diego night air afterwards. Incredible! Ryan Reynolds, who has his own advertising agency that spun out of his work crafting the first Deadpool ad campaign, went above and beyond to advertise this film, not just in terms of hard work, but also creativity. Incredible! Incredible! They give out awards for advertising, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a couple more for this. We also, fascinatingly, witnessed a shift in spoiler culture, where for the first time in a while, the majority of fans did not want to know everything going into the movie. Usually it's tell me everything. That's what it was like for Spider-Man No Way Home. But here people were like, I don't want to hear until I go in to see the movie myself. People blocked words on social media, and in some cases, you guys totally stayed off. And you guys, many of you felt that your hard work paid off, improving your theatrical experience. However, again, after the Marvel Hall H panel, it seems spoiler culture has gone right back to where it once was. I mean, when we trust Marvel, we want to let them cook. But when that confidence is shaken, we want to poke our heads into the kitchen. And I feel that's kind of where we back are. I think that in many ways really is a good way to explain why spoiler culture is the way that it is. And that's interesting that we trusted Ryan Reynolds towards the end so much that we didn't want to know anything. We just wanted to have that great experience. Did Kevin Feige see the tremendous interest in Hugh Jackman's return and say, maybe he could replicate it with Robert Downey Jr.? Last night's panel not only doubled down on the multiverse, but also nostalgia. Seems that craze ain't ending anytime soon. Not only did Kevin Feige bring back the original anchor being of the MCU, Tony Stark, but he also brought back the MCU's most successful directors. It's worth noting that both of these people also only came up because of horrible problems with the original selections. Jonathan Majors, Kang could not move forward. And also, they couldn't get a director. A lot of directors passed on doing these Avengers movies or weren't available because of conflicts. And so, it's a very interesting scenario. And it's also embarrassing for a lot of the Phase 4 talent. Some of them, it's embarrassing. I think it's just a little bit embarrassing all around. Not only because some of the Phase 4 talent said no thank you. Sean Levy twice offered this directing gig and twice turning it down. But also none of the Phase 4 talent in front of the camera has really been able to win over the fans, to the degree that Kevin Feige lost his confidence in introducing new characters. And instead of introducing a new Doom, he decided he would be better off making the beloved character a Tony Stark variant, which is a very risky move. But just because Kang didn't work, I think a lot of the problems were the writing. We've been saying it's the Rick and Morty writers. I don't think they needed to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So we'll see. And as I said, all of these big announcements for Fantastic Four and the Avengers and how shocking and stylized and different they are, that undercut Captain America, Brave New World, and Thunderbolts, which are more like the old MCU. It's worth noting that 2015 Secret Wars, part of the purpose of that crossover event, was to bring the traditional 616 Marvel Universe and the Ultimate Universe, which had been a spin-off, for several years, very successful. I think that came actually around the time that the X-Men movies started. Again, comic books losing their confidence and being like, we don't want people to have to go back and read all these old comics. God forbid they read some of the greatest stories ever told. Let's give them an entry point where they can come in on the ground floor. And the Ultimate Universe was successful enough. It was successful enough that they wanted to bring a number of the characters like Miles Morales over into the 616, but not so successful that they wanted to continue it. And that's what this event largely did. I tried to start reading it last night after the live stream. I bought it on the live stream. And I got to tell you, I still don't like it. I think that it is some of Jonathan Hickman's most cerebral work. It's very hard to get into, and I suspect it will need to be majorly rewritten and repurposed for the purposes of the MCU. I'm curious to see how what they use and what they don't. I still continue to feel that the Thor core, Doctor Strange. I thought I'd forgotten the Fantastic Four had kind of an arc. Like a Noah's Ark to try and save this great scientific minds and as these universes potentially maybe disappeared. So those could be interesting elements, but it's going to be very difficult to adapt. I'm glad they brought back Stephen McFeely because this is going to be hard to do. But anyway, perhaps Feige is going to use his two Secret Wars movies to do the same of conjoining the MCU and also the Fox Marvel movies. Maybe that's what he's using it for. It's too early to tell. It'll be tough. And I think that the very, very, very poor adaptation of Secret Invasion gives us a lot of cause for concern, rightfully so. And again, Secret Invasion was very digestible. Have any of you started reading Secret Wars or gone back to it? It's dense. It's dense. It's like a physics textbook, which is one of my biggest critiques of a lot of Hickman's work. Some of you are like, I love physics. Well, I'm glad, but it's not for everybody. All right, does Deadpool even fit into a serious story like Secret Wars? The character has proven to be massively popular, more popular than ever, even taking over Disneyland and Disneyland Paris, the latest evolution in the Disney adult phenomenon, because even though this meet and greet and story hour are clearly PG-13 still, they're also very clearly aimed at adult fans. So that to me is also fascinating. With all this massive interest in Deadpool, what will Feige do with him? Now that it seems that the future of the MCU has not created a space for him. Deadpool is very good at making a space for himself, as is Ryan Reynolds, obviously. But you don't want to be unwelcome. That's a lesson Robert Downey Jr. never learned, but I think Ryan Reynolds is keenly aware of. Ryan Reynolds can read the room. I think isn't that an interesting comparison? I think before Saturday night's panel, a lot of us were ready to say that Marvel was back, unequivocally, and that they still had it. But again, come Sunday, after the panel, I truly believe that a lot of the success of Deadpool and Wolverine clearly belongs to Ryan Reynolds. Clearly it was him. And that Feige continues to take really big risks, right? Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom, a highly stylized Fantastic Four. We're going to talk about Fly Me to the Moon in a few moments. And continues to fracture the MCU into multiple different directions instead of building a specific single direction like he once did that everybody could clearly get behind together. Very DC. We've talked about fracturing the audience. I think there's clearly going to be a camp that's like pro Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom and very much against it. You can already seeing that division taking place. It's a deep division. And why do that? I think you should have just had like some bitch in casting as Doom and get everybody excited. All right. Before my Deadpool and Wolverine showing on Saturday, before the trailers had started during like the theatrical pre-show, there was a trailer for The Boys. And I felt that having those two in the same space was really interesting to me. And I had felt, seeing that the huge success of these two properties showed a clear direction that the audience wants to go in, being very adult, very hardcore, a little bit meta, or, addressing and tearing down some of the formulas that audiences have grown tired of. And so I'm very surprised to discover that we are not heading in that direction after all. I mean, The Boys still is, obviously, but the MCU will not be joining them. Back to Ryan Reynolds' genius. It's worth noting that one of the ways he worked to blow this movie up was going after female audiences, knowing that typically they do not show up for superhero fare. It's very smart to try to think, well, how can I increase my numbers over the previous two films? I know, mobilize previously unaccessed pockets of cash to try and drive that number up. That's why he had Taylor Swift, for instance, promote the film over her social media accounts and did an advertising spot specifically for The Bachelorette. Did it work? It did not work. I mean, the audience was still 66% male. And for comparison, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was 62% male. That was a little bit more women showed up for that. Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't have any major female characters. And I think that would have maybe helped in, upping the female audience. Obviously, having strong women in a project doesn't always work. I mean, look at the Marvels, 65% male, but sometimes it really does. Wonder Woman was split right down the middle, 50-50. Well, X-Men Days of Future Past was several strong female characters, including, Rebecca Romijn was fantastic, and a lot of us are fans. But, X-Men Days of Future Past was 56% male, 44% female. I was looking up these old numbers, and it turns out that was the best female audience percentage that the X-Men movies had ever brought in. And so even though Jennifer Lawrence was a very different Mystique who kind of shied away from the sexuality of the character, maybe that endeared her more to female moviegoers. And, she gave her, more of a persona, more going on inside. And so that's fascinating to me, and that I was able to reach out to more female audiences. But Deadpool and Wolverine, it still did incredibly well, but still hasn't been able to get more women to go. Even Ryan Reynolds couldn't do it, which just shows you how hard it is. Deadpool and Wolverine did excel with walk-up business. 41% buying a ticket the day of. That's incredible, especially considering how much, that's because they booked the movie in so many theaters, and you could do that. While a lot of the early shows sold out, they added so many theaters at the last minute. Often, Deadpool and Wolverine was playing less than every 45 minutes or something. It was really amazing. Sucks for all the other movies. You'll see what happened to Twisters in just a moment. But yeah, it was good for Deadpool and Wolverine. And it underscored how much Reynolds really built up a party atmosphere. Now, this is huge. Deadpool and Wolverine was the latest film to be superpowered by the Latino demographic at 32%, by far and away the biggest demographic for the film. This is the summer that Latino audiences are changing the game in Hollywood, and expect to see that reflected in the projects that are coming together now, not just for the big screen, but I suspect all size screens, and also how these films are advertised, the outlets, channels, and talent that's reached out to. The Latino community has become a huge surge of cash for Hollywood, and I'm sure they are aware of it. And even if Marvel decided to treat Deadpool and Wolverine more like a side quest instead of a new directive for the franchise, expect other franchises to be heavily influenced. Again, not just in the type of movies and shows that they make, but in how they are advertised. Barbie and now Deadpool and Wolverine? Clearly, next level advertising makes a big difference at the box office, and it's worth the tremendous expense. Dune kind of was a little bit like this, but I don't think anything's been at the level of Barbie except for Deadpool and Wolverine, which, and kudos to Margot Robbie. Ryan Reynolds, we know, is a marketing genius. But I think, Margot Robbie, I think, continues to impress with her own business hat. She is very skilled as a business, well, for some reason, only with Barbie. I think a lot of her other business choices are actually extremely suspect. But I guess just like Ryan Reynolds excels with Deadpool, Margot Robbie has found her calling with Barbie. Both of them really understand the character creatively and business-wise. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. On that note, expect Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and Sean Levy to get big offers outside of the MCU, as Hollywood loves a winner and coattails to ride. Ryan Reynolds already has a deal, I believe, over at Paramount. Hugh Jackman, I don't think, has a deal, but he's not a big producer. We'll see. And also, his big love is Broadway, so he might sign a big Broadway show off of this. I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe they'll make maybe they'll bring The Greatest Showman to Broadway. They teased it a lot. Disney now owns the rights to that because it was a Fox movie. They've been teasing it a lot in the humor, not only in the movie, but in the Disneyland storytelling hour. And so I've always said that it would be great to bring The Greatest Showman, maybe with Hugh Jackman, to Broadway. And if I were Disney, I would maybe seriously consider that. That'd be just so great. Tickets like that, they'd go like crazy. And then also Sean Levy, who is already very booked and busy, and also, he, of course, one of the reasons that Sean Levy is such a talented director these days is because he leveled up on Stranger Things. And so as soon as the Duffer Brothers become available, because Stranger Things is wrapping up its final season, I think they'll be very much in demand as well. We'll see who gets them. It's funny. I think all the franchises are sort of in trouble now, so maybe the Duffer Brothers will start their own. But I don't know. Joining Marvel, DC, or Star Wars is a pretty big instant paycheck. I'm not sure who they should go with. I think Marvel's still on shaky ground. I think I thought that maybe they were solidifying, but I think, okay, let's rank them. I think like DC, well, I don't know. Star Wars might have passed to DC as the worst, but I don't know. It's very tricky these days. Fans are so passionate, let's say, that it can really hurt careers. And I don't know if it's maybe that's one of the reasons that nobody wanted to direct the Avengers movies. At the end of the day, maybe it's just not worth it. Unless you're the Russo brothers and you just can't seem to direct for shit anymore. All right. It's funny because it's true. As for the rest of the box office, Twisters definitely got swept away in Deadpool and Wolverine mania, losing not just its premium screens after a single weekend, but almost all of its regular big screens as well. The result, it fell 57% in its second weekend, but August will be interesting. Maybe after this Comic-Con announcement, Deadpool and Wolverine will drop, and then Twisters can maybe rebound a little bit. Or Universal will put it on digital by the middle of the month. I think Universal doesn't care. I think they maybe care a little bit, but, we'll see. Is Twisters already over? The rest of August is so slow. I could see Twisters rebounding maybe a little. But I don't know. Just like the news cycle is very short, it seems to some degree the entertainment cycle is very short as well. All right, Despicable Me 4 and Inside Out 2, this is fascinating, are still both going very strong, very nice holds. Possibly, I think, very likely because Deadpool and Wolverine is rated R. Just 11% of the Deadpool and Wolverine audience was under 17, while it seems that the norm for Marvel movies is 21% of the audience is under 17. So cut in half. Inside Out 2 also just passed The Incredibles 2 to now be the highest grossing animated film of all time, domestic as well as worldwide. Although many of you are like, the Lion King is animated. Well, agree to disagree with Hollywood. Although some of Hollywood is like, yeah, but yeah, whatever. All right, Longlegs also held, just give Inside Out 2 the win. Really. All right, so Longlegs also held up all right in the face of Deadpool and Wolverine, falling just 43% in its third weekend, proving once again how formidable the horror genre is. Fly Me to the Moon continues to plummet and hasn't even been able to make $20 million total domestic in 3 weekends. The failure of this whimsical 1960s space romance, which, by the way, is an excellent movie, should make Marvel, I would think, a little bit nervous because they're taking a similar approach stylistically with the Fantastic Four. Also, by the way, while Mad Men got so much attention and won so many awards, a lot of people don't realize that nobody watched that show. Its viewership was quite poor. And so I always am nervous when anybody else tries to copy that in a bigger space. I'm like, nobody watched Mad Men. Be careful. Then, two small movies managed to open in the top 10. Another comedy targeting older audiences, The Fabulous Four, and yet another film from India, Ryan. It's wonderful to see all these films from India able to debut in the top 10, but it would be nice to see some of them be able to hold for a little bit as well. I believe one of them was able to hold for 2 weeks over the past month or so. All right, over on streaming, starting with Nielsen for late June, Bryan Cranston, he did it, continues to bask in the resurgence of Your Honor, enjoying Suits-like success on Netflix and Paramount+. He's still not getting any big deals off of it, though. Let's see. Bryan Cranston, what happened to him? Remember we wanted him to be Lex Luthor? Where is he? Dexter is also, maybe he's just enjoying his cash, which is fine. Dexter is also having another resurgence. It seems like it's had resurgences before, but here we are again. And Michael C. Hall is getting more work, as it was just announced at Comic-Con that he is returning to this franchise with a new show, I think called like Dexter Resurrection, fittingly. As for our June showdown, The Bear entered the charts this week as a binge, and as expected was quite strong out of the gate. But fans have had a horrible reaction to season 3, as they should. Unwatchable. I forced myself to watch it, but a lot of it was a blur because it was just so bad. But it will be interesting to see this space next week and how that maybe affects the viewership. Incredibly, The Boys continues to hold off House of the Dragon, itself announcing having a big announcement at Comic-Con that they're going to be doing a prequel focusing on fan favorite Soldier Boy as well as Stormfront. You know, this is interesting because the show took a lot of heat from its conservative fans for the more aggressive political commentary in season 4, and yet here they go, it seems, rewarding their conservative fans in a major way with a show that focuses on Soldier Boy and Stormfront. You know, people are excited for more of The Boys, but yet some people also pointed out the moral dilemma of making a show about these two characters in their heyday. All right, House of the Dragon is doing very nicely for sure, but that The Boys is able to overshadow it consistently week to week, I think is definitely a very big talking point. And once again, The Acolyte can't even make the originals chart. Forget the overall chart, which goes, and this originals chart, look how low the bottom of the chart is. The Acolyte can't even still place. This, by the way, was the week of episode 5, the best episode of the season. So it's just a colossal failure, certainly viewership-wise, which is, you know, and it's really bad. It's you know, it's so bad, it's like, let's just move on. All right, speaking of failure, you know what else isn't on this chart? Apple TV's Presumed Innocent, which at this point in its run was already in its 4th episode. And again, the bottom of this chart is quite low. So that's very perplexing because, you know, I'm sure Apple is like, what the F, man? Because their shows, they get, you know, a lot of praise from the media, and in this case, viewers just went crazy over Presumed Innocent. It even trended a couple of times during its run. But yet here, it can't even make the charts. And it's just more evidence as to why Apple TV, it was announced, is pretty much going to end their huge spend on original streaming content. Why do you think Apple TV just can't connect with a larger audience, despite the overwhelming quality of their product? I think it's, curious to hear your thoughts down below, but I think it's a combination of not enough advertising, it just being too many streaming services for people to subscribe to, even when you bring in churn as a factor. It's just too many. And also a reflection of the fact that despite Apple's cool factor, most people are quite simply on a different platform, from their computers to their phones. Look at how many people were affected by the CrowdStrike outage, and all those people don't have Apple TV shows in front of them. That's very, very interesting. Apple TV shows, in fact, were started as an incentive to use Apple as a product because it used to, remember, come with a free subscription to Apple TV. Did not work. Should they have sold the shows a la carte more on iTunes and other digital platforms? Maybe. Maybe they should have. A lot of great content just didn't get in front of people, which is a shame. With streaming movies, this continues to be a very uninteresting space, with Netflix able to easily dominate with softball movies starring big-name talent collecting big paychecks. It will be interesting to see how Dan Lin shakes up Netflix's movie division, particularly since he promised to bring spending under control. Will big stars still want to make softball streaming movies if it means they don't get ridiculous amounts of money to do so? On that note, on Netflix's charts for this past week, what in the Harry Connick Jr. is this? Did you even realize that was Harry Connick Jr.? But it is number 1. I guess what would leave Netflix, what would be left for them is the ability to revive careers, potentially. So like Zac Efron, maybe, but not Nicole Kidman, I would think. With shows, it seems like Cobra Kai is also ready to come to an end because this is a week launch for the first part of its final season. And even in the build-up to the Olympics, this Simone Biles documentary didn't garner a lot of attention. On iTunes, Bad Boys 4 is the latest big movie to jump to digital and likewise debut at number 1, while current events still fuel renewed interest in Civil War. And wow, this Warner Brothers 25 film bundle is an amazing deal at $20. 25 films for $20. That's less than $1 a movie. And these are excellent films, by the way. I didn't buy this because a lot of these films are just like work for me. So I would have liked them to have like a good drama bundle. They only have this fantasy action adventure bundle. I'm like, where's the drama romance bundle or something, man? I mean, Warner Brothers has an amazing library, and I wish they had a bunch of 25-year bundles. 25 film bundles. But that's just like, wow. And while it dropped a bit, Horizon is at least still in the middle of the pack because I really, really want to see part 2. Come on, man. I gotta see how the story ends. And Netflix isn't the only place for older stars to make a comeback because that's Freddie Prinze Jr. down there at number 10 with The Girl in the Pool, which is kind of, it seems like a little bit like a presumed innocent type story. As for this coming week, with both Warner Brothers and Sony, they will try to counter-program Deadpool and Wolverine with Trap and Harold and the Purple Crayon, respectively. I plan to review Trap, but get this. It turns out that Warner Brothers is only playing the film in advance for press that are doing interviews with the talent. So that means there will be no regular press screenings for the film. What does that mean? Is M. Nighting once again? In a good way where they want to protect the ending, the twist ending, or in a bad way where they're like, maybe we can trick people into at least seeing it opening weekend. The trailer looks so good. I am shocked that they won't play that for most of the press in advance. I'm a little nervous. I'm still going to see it, but that's weird to me. On digital, sure enough, as reported, here comes A Quiet Place Day 1 this Tuesday, while on streaming, Netflix is busy, or, clearing the deck with not just the new SpongeBob movie, but also the director's cuts for both of Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon movies dropping at once. Then with shows, Futurama is back with new episodes starting tomorrow, Monday, while on Thursday, Netflix has Unstable Season 2 and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder starring Wednesday fan favorite Emma Myers. But the really big deal this week is that Batman Caped Crusader hits Prime Video also on Thursday. People are going to be talking about this show, both good and bad, and I will have fun coverage for us to go over. Not just my review, but I have some fun spoiler coverage planned as well. All right, so finally, also then on Friday, Apple TV drops another great show that probably nobody's going to watch, and that's a docuseries called Cowboy Cartel. And that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what are your thoughts on Marvel's big weekend? Who do you think deserves the credit for Deadpool and Wolverine's success? And did Marvel undercut that success with their big Comic-Con announcements? Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.